This podcast is part of the Planet Broadcasting Network.
Visit planetbroadcasting.com for more podcasts from our great mates.
Welcome to Primates Podcast, the podcast where we go through primates and popular culture from Chimpan A all the way down to Chimpan Z. This week, I'm joined by a very special guest, first-time primate. It's DJ Levins.
It's me, Andrew. Even DJ. The D in DJ stands for the D in the middle of Andrew.
So you are publicly known. People know your first name is Andrew.
Yeah, I guess.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone refer to you as Andrew.
I'm mostly known as Levins. My mum calls me Andrew, my grandma, my dad calls me Levins, and my sisters call me Levins. So when I was a kid, there were 4 Andrews in my grade.
Right.
One got Andrew, one got Andy, one got Drew, and I got Levins.
I think Levins is the best of those by far.
So when I had kids, I was like, we have to think of names that are cooler than Levins. So that, the world just doesn't default to calling them Levins too.
I don't know. I reckon that's a real gift you give them. Levins.
We tried anyway.
Little Levins. Yeah, I like Levins a lot. The first time I met you was at the Meredith Music Festival, and later that night, you played a great set. It caused a lot of controversy.
It did.
Which I was unaware of until like a week later when I saw a lot of articles online.
Yeah, it was one of those things where, and it was before this became the norm. So I played I was booked to play a big dumb party set. And I interpreted that as just playing like a bunch of classic songs and a bunch of new songs and like kind of songs that I would play in clubs. And I played some dancehall songs, some reggae songs. And in amongst those songs, I played a pop song with a dancehall beat belonging to Justin Bieber. The song's Sorry. It's a jam. I love that song. I still do. But people started booing. So,
right.
Well, like 3 people.
Right.
And so I pulled the mic down and I said, fuck anyone who doesn't love Bieber. And then that got written about in the newspaper, and like mostly Geelong-based residents targeted my Facebook page for a while, saying mostly they just wanted to call me a flog, which is something I've never been called before.
Yeah, that's a real AFL culture thing, I think.
Right.
Flog. That's big on like Triple M football talkback. There you go. You're a flog. What a flog.
Yeah, so
old AFL players love using flog.
I got called that for a while.
That's wild.
Yeah, and then it just kind of spiraled out, and people started writing articles about the outrage. And of course, I'm one of those people that like I can't ignore. Like I know that you're meant to.
Don't feed the trolls.
Exactly. A lot of our friends that do radio are educated to never feed the trolls, but I gave them so much, and it went way too big.
Right.
For something so stupid and small.
Yeah, playing a song at a festival in the middle. It would have been like 1 a.m. or something, 2 a.m.
Yeah.
And my favorite thing about that set was pretty last minute. They asked you if you had any visuals, and you sent them 11 photos of Plucky Duck.
Yeah, they were like, what do you want to put behind you? And I was like, oh, I don't really have anything. Can I just send you like some pictures? They're like, oh yeah. And so I just Googled Plucky Duck, who was, how the fuck do you describe Plucky Duck?
Like a game show sidekick from a variety show in the 90s.
Called Hey Hey It's Saturday. And so Plucky Duck was this game segment where you had to basically Plucky Duck is a man in a duck suit with a cap on, and he used to always do the ridgy-didge fingers.
Yes.
Or the shaka. He would at one point ride a bike, and the bike would then move a big wheel, which would then move a bunch of ducks that were hanging from the ceiling, and you had to grab a duck or pluck a duck. And then when you pulled the pants off the duck, it had a number, and then they were like, you want a washing machine?
Yeah.
But me and Angus, who I do Hey Fam, my podcast with, Angus started Plucky Duck Memes, which was the greatest meme page on the internet for a hot minute. Many hot minutes. And so it was already an ongoing kind of joke that I would contribute to. And then I was like, fuck it, we'll just go all Plucky Duck. And so, yeah, for the first couple minutes, I didn't see it because I was obviously DJing, but you'd know better than I do. But they cycled through all these pictures of Plucky Duck repeatedly for a few minutes. And then they started putting weird effects on them. So it just there's slow zoom into this dude in a duck costume.
Oh, it was the best. I think I was so taken by that I entirely missed the Bieber incident. And it's funny that, it feels like that should be that. No one mentioned that at all.
No.
But playing one Bieber song that is pretty good.
Well, I mean, Geelong residents are like, a man in a duck suit on a screen. Fine.
Okay. Another Saturday night.
Bieber on a dance hall beat.
Nah, no good. Well, anyway, I think that's a pretty good introduction to who you are. And you've come in today really with maybe the perfect topic for you, mixing all your loves, comics and music and primates to come into the one Gorillaz band.
That's right. The triangle.
Yeah. That's where exactly in that tri-state intersection is where you belong. So the Gorillaz a band, and this is something I didn't realize until the last couple of days. They're not actually gorillas.
You're like, what have I done?
I know. I did think that they were a band of gorillas, but no, they're humans.
Yeah, and they've used less and less primate imagery as their career has continued.
Right.
So you can pull the plug on this at any point.
Yeah, great. Because they started like their first recording studio was Kong Studios.
Yep, that's right.
I guess we should explain a little bit. I've got this paragraph off of their Wikipedia, so pretty deep research has gone into this. I thought I'd read this out for people who aren't familiar with them. This is what it says. Gorillaz are an English virtual band created in 1998 by musician Damon Albarn and artist Jamie Hewlett. The band primarily consists of 4 animated members, 2D, Murdock Nichols, Noodle, and Russell Hobbs. Their fictional universe is explored through music videos, interviews, and other short cartoons. In reality, Albarn is the only permanent musical contributor and often collaborates with other musicians. That's a pretty good summary.
Yeah, definitely. It left out 2 key parts, though, and that is who Damon Albarn and Jamie Hewlett are.
Right.
And do you know who they are?
Well, Damon Albarn is Britpop god.
Yep.
The front man of Blur. And
the polar opposite of the Gallaghers.
Right. So, yeah, that was always the big, that was sort of the Beatles and Rolling Stones of the 90s.
Yeah, he was the yin to their yangs.
Right. And then there was Jarvis Cocker in between somewhere.
One of the dots, I don't know.
Yeah. And then I was going to say Hewlett Packard, but that's not his name. Jamie Hewlett is an artist, and I read that he met Damon in the early 90s, maybe even in 1990 when, Brian Coxon? His Blur bandmate introduced him to him.
Right.
And Hewlett interviewed Blur, and that's how they met, and they formed a relationship. And then as Blur was coming to an end almost, or were they already finished?
I mean, they both Gorillaz and Blur have kind of like come and gone throughout their careers, had long breaks, and that's why Gorillaz began to begin with. But Jamie Hewlett is famous for creating Tank Girl.
Right.
And he had a magazine called Deadline, which is what he interviewed Damon Albarn for to begin with. And the two actually didn't get on at all. He thought Damon Albarn was a wanker.
Oh, right. Interesting. Yeah. That's great. So Tank Girl's big.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I didn't realize that. And that's still, I hear that talked about still.
I regularly dip into the Tank Girl universe on Serious Issues, my comic book podcast, because we read all the new number ones each time they come out.
Right.
And Tank Girl will put out like a 6-issue miniseries. Jamie Hewlett's not involved anymore, but they love to recycle his old art, and they've been re-releasing some of his original stuff. I've never really gelled with the character of Tank Girl that much, even though she is Australian and hot like me.
Yeah, and me.
Yeah. It's like a kind of punky Australian girl who's frequently topless, fighting alongside kangaroos and fighting kind of like big businesses and stuff like that.
What's the tank part?
She often is in a tank.
Right, okay, that makes sense.
Or a tank top.
That makes it's all clicked into gear now. I get it. Oh, that's cool. Okay, so I had no idea that it's not Australian, but it's based in Australia. So
yeah, he's a UK artist.
So it's probably all this sort of slightly weird versions of Australia.
Yeah, and especially revisiting, like you revisit any comic from the 80s, and there's always some things like, oh, this would not fly today.
Right.
There's a lot of Aboriginal characters in there that you're just like, oh no, why was this put to print?
Right. And unfortunately, it's in print.
Yep, and they're still re-releasing it undoctored, like those weird Tintin in the Congo re-releases.
Oh, right.
Have you read that shit?
No.
So like Tintin is like the most like racially insensitive cartoon ever if you go back to its roots, and
that it's got a lot of competition. I mean, even early Disney.
No, I think Tintin probably takes the cake.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, hang on a second. You're not some sort of PC crusader, are you?
Well, actually, yeah, the J in DJ, obviously the D is from the D, and Andrew J is from the SJW.
Right, okay.
Yeah, DJ Levins.
You're all about justice.
That's right. Online only.
Okay. Well, I think that's okay. In the IRL, obviously. In the IRL, shit happens. So did you grow up liking Gorillaz? Because I mean, they came up in the 90s when you would have been probably discovering music and stuff.
So my favorite, I loved Britpop. I loved Blur. And I loved when Blur got a bit more kind of experimental. I think that album 13.
Yeah.
Do you know that one that's got Tender on it?
Yeah, the one where they're all in the room singing.
Yep. Yeah.
A song that goes for ages.
Yeah, that one's really good. I sing that to my son. It was one of my favorite songs to sing at nighttime.
That is a great song.
But then there's also some really noisy songs on that, like BLUREMI, stuff like that. Of course, Beetlebum from that era as well. Like those are my preferred things to like the kind of like really, really soppy Britpop.
Right.
Lives in a house, very big house.
Because it does feel like they had a lot more range than Oasis, probably.
Totally, and that's why people chose Oasis or Blur based off of if you want the same album over and over again, just keep listening to Oasis. If you want a band that grows and as the members themselves grow apart, and then they bring weird sounds back from their time away from the group.
So it's going to be probably more hit and miss, but the hits are going to be more satisfying.
Yeah, and then I guess critics stopped paying attention to Oasis almost altogether. Like, it's still the same record,
right? Yeah, it's an interesting thing that does seem to be the two ways bands can go. I guess you either stick with what you know or you evolve.
Yeah, totally. Or you take drugs.
Yeah, like
see what happens.
AC/DC sort of went down the rinse and repeat path. And then I don't know what the equivalent of AC/DC is. Hard rock probably isn't super known for getting too experimental.
Who's apart around at the same time? The Bee Gees.
Yeah, the Bee Gees. They definitely they didn't start in the disco. They went with it, and then they came out the other side.
They evolved.
They did evolve or die. That's what Barry Gibb always said to me.
And also a very really important factor when you are a primate.
Yes,
evolution.
That's true. Well, that's good. I'm glad you're here to get me back onto the topic of this bloody podcast. Do you have a favorite primate?
So I have a book that I, before I sing Blur to my son, I always read two books, two songs. Off you go to bed.
2 books, 2 songs. That's a good deal.
One of my favorite authors, and he's been my favorite author since I was a kid too, is someone that draws a lot of monkey-based books. His name is Anthony Brown. He's most famous for doing the books Willie the Wimp.
I love Willie the Wimp.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite books as a kid. And I've heard since, because I was looking into it, I'm like, I want to do an episode on this guy. And yeah, people see it now as being a bit problematic because it's all about a chimp, right? And he's a wimp and he's bagged out. He's bullied a lot at school. So he there's an ad in a newspaper or something
to get big and tough.
Get pumped, get swole.
Like a gorilla.
And yeah, like a gorilla, and he changes himself to find acceptance. And apparently I guess it isn't the best message.
No, but he's still like same old Willie.
Right.
And there's also like, the continuity of those books is all over the shop because sometimes he's big, sometimes he's small. So I think we're fine.
Okay,
I think uncancel Willie the Wimp.
But maybe it is okay for a cartoon chimp to get big.
I think so.
Okay, great.
He still walks into a pole and apologizes to it at the end of the book, I think.
Right.
So he hasn't changed.
What a wimp. But a nice man.
And anyway, Anthony Brown, one of the books he's written is called One Gorilla, and it goes up to 10. So it's like 1 gorilla, 2 baboons, 3 mandrills. So I'm very, very aware of all the different primate species that are featured within that. I think it's number 7 Gibbons. I love a Gibbons.
Oh.
Is it a Gibbon or a Gibbons?
I think it's a Gibbon. That's a Gibbon.
It's a Gibbon.
Yeah.
It's a Gibbon.
I'm pretty sure it's a Gibbon. And last week's episode, you might be familiar with this. We talked about Marvel apes, and that is all opened up by the character the Gibbon,
right?
Who crosses through this portal into the ape reality.
So I'm actually way more familiar with the DC primate characters. There's way more of them. So it's who did you have on for Marvel apes?
Who as a guest?
Yeah.
Peter Thomas, who's an illustrator.
Unreal.
And he's also come on to talk about Hit Monkey.
Oh,
I don't know
great.
if you're familiar with that one.
No idea.
Another Marvel one.
Oh, okay, sure.
So yeah, I forget that because
I'm way more of a Marvel guy. But
interesting.
except when it comes to monkeys.
Right.
Because with DC, you've got Detective Chimp, who's
Yeah.
a detective and a chimp. And he has like weird ties to the multiverse. And then you have Gorilla Grodd, one of the Flash's
That's a big
greatest
one.
villains. And then there's there's so many gorilla characters. One of them starts with S. One of them has like this big brain in a jar that he's in love with. There's so many good monkey characters.
I'm super keen to get into the DC universe. Maybe when I'm up in Sydney, I can hang out in your comic.
Yeah, no
Comic Zone.
one loves the only person that loves DC chimps more than me is Siobhan, who I do serious issues with.
Awesome.
So yeah, in answer to your question, Gibbons, because I went to Singapore Zoo earlier in the year, and the Gibbons are just like chilling above you at all times. So these like cute furry dudes that are like mostly orange, really really nice like docile primate, but they don't have tails. They have like big hard butts.
Hard butts, but their arms are kind of like long tails almost. They're amazing looking creatures. They look made up.
I wanted to say another one because I love their faces so much, but I don't know how to pronounce it. Like macaques.
Oh yeah, you'd love Hit Monkey because he is a Japanese macaque,
Right.
or macaque,
depending on how many of his ex-wives.
Yeah, obviously there's.
It's a cuck joke. I can't. My brain isn't working fast enough to make it good. But
you,
macaque.
Yeah, you get it.
He's the primate that fucks your wife
Hit Monkey, macaque,
or husband.
You macaque fuck. The Gibbons, they're apes in the family Hylobatidae. I really should check out how to pronounce Latin stuff. The family historically contained one genus, but is now split into 4 genera and 18 species. Gibbons occur in tropical and subtropical rainforests from eastern Bangladesh and northeast India to southern China and Indonesia. Bloody hell. They're also called the smaller apes or lesser apes. But to me,
That's rude.
they're not at all lesser apes. They're at least...
Are all apes equal, Matt?
Yes.
Oh, good.
In my heart and in my mind. That's from this website that I use sometimes, Wikipedia.
I think there's a second plug for it so far this episode.
Well, I'm trying to get its numbers up. Hopefully we can organise some sort of sponsorship deal into the future. Anyway, back to gorillas. So you don't want to talk about this? I mean,
I've got Gibbons on the mind.
We can come back to Gibbons. Billy Gibbons, other musical people. He's from ZZ Top.
Gibbons guitar.
Yeah.
No.
You bailed on it, which I appreciate. So they came up in the late 90s. They came out sort of from a hiatus of Blur.
Well, I mean, Damon Albarn, he has a huge amount of musical output. He's very, very
prolific.
That's the word I was looking for. And he meets Jamie Hewlett, and even though they're fans of each other, they don't get along. But and then Jamie Hewlett starts dating the lead singer of Elastica, who used to date Damon Albarn, and so they hate each other even more. Then they break up. Oh wait, no. I think Damon Albarn was dating the girl from Elastica, and Jamie Hewlett was dating someone else that he used to date, and then they both break up, and for some reason move with each other in the late 90s. And then they're watching a bunch of MTV and like classic, Banksy-ish comments like, oh, you watch this, you start to lose your mind. Music doesn't mean anything anymore. Hey, let's do a project where we prove to everyone how much it doesn't matter and make a virtual band featuring characters that you make up, and that's the band. Right. And so they ended up settling on the name Gorillaz with an AZ at the end. So they drew these. Jamie Hewlett drew these incredible designs for these really unique, like pretty fucked up looking band members. Two of the members don't have eyeballs.
Yeah, one of them has glowing eyes, and the other one has black. One has full white eyes, and one has full black eyes.
Yeah, so 2D is the lead singer, and he's the kind of closest analogy to Damon Albarn, I guess.
Right.
So when you hear the voice singing in the film clip, it usually comes out of 2D.
Right.
And then you have Murdock, who is like this, like kind of like this evil genius who is kind of in the lore of the Gorillaz is kind of responsible for putting the band together. Russell is an American from New York who was haunted by his entire crew was gunned down in a drive-by, and he is haunted by all of his friends.
Yeah, it's their souls collected inside his body.
And that's why his eyes are like that.
Yeah, that's why his eyes start to glow.
Yeah, and then Noodle, they put out an ad for a band member in NME, and immediately a package from FedEx showed up containing Noodle, who was their guitarist.
A 10-year-old Japanese girl.
Yeah, who can't talk except the word noodle.
And she's lost her memories.
Yeah, so this is all I knew about it when I first saw the clip for Clint Eastwood, which is kind of like certainly their first big single here. Their first song that they recorded and released as Gorillaz was called Tomorrow Comes Today. But do you remember seeing that song, Clint Eastwood?
Yeah.
I ain't happy.
Yeah. So that was the first album, was it?
Yeah.
So that's late 90s?
Yeah, they're like 2001.
Right.
And so I am on my way to year 11 retreat.
Yes.
And I went to a Catholic school. And so when you hit year 11, you stop going on camps and you start going on retreats, and you stop visiting areas where you might watch someone describe how people used to pan for gold, and you start meeting priests.
Yeah.
Yep.
I had the same thing. We went to a ranch retreat. There was like horses and a chapel and a rope course.
Yeah, you still have the trappings of the camp stuff,
Yeah.
but there's a priest there for some reason.
Yeah. But trying to be a cool priest.
Yeah, and like your PE teacher is like, before you eat, he gets up and tells you about like the hardest day of his life for some reason,
Yeah.
which is like when he went for his P's, but he hadn't learned how to drive manual, so now he drives automatic, and we're like meant to relate to him now because he drives an automatic car now, even though the rest of his family drives a manual.
It's so funny to think back to those times and put yourself in the mind of that teacher, being like, oh shit, all right. Let me try and think of some tough tale from my past.
It stuck with me though. I always remember that.
It's amazing how that it really does work that way. We had one of our brothers. I remember he played this song. I forget who it was by. It was a one-hit wonder, and it was called "What If God Was One of Us."
Joni Mitchell.
Joni Mitchell. Was it really? Not a one-hit wonder then. And
wait, that's definitely not Joni Mitchell. Sorry, you continue. I'm going to look at it.
And then he played it in full, and we're watching him on the stage or whatever, listening to a song.
Joan Osborne.
Oh, great.
Very different,
but very close. And then he goes, "Yeah, just listen to and then he read out some of the lyrics again. And he's like, there's a lot of meaning in that. What if God was one of us, just a stranger on the bus? Think about it." And like 100 kids in front of him, like, yeah, yep. Yep.
Do you remember the days of Napster where you would Napster was like how we got illegal MP3s in the late 90s or the 2000s.
Pre LimeWire.
The Gorillaz era, if you will. But you would like look up an artist that you liked, and people would just like mislabel other people's songs. So I remember like always wanting to find like new Weird Al songs, and there'd be like, all of his classics, and then there'd be like a few that were like, oh, this is a bit blue for Weird Al, and there was one credited to him, which was a parody of that Joan Osborne song. It was called "What If God Smoked Cannabis."
Right. Weird Al wouldn't go there.
Never. No drug references in a Weird Al song.
They were wild times because it was a bit of a lottery what you were going to get. Like I'd be getting like Metallica or Pantera songs on there, and it'd be like garage bands. You imagine people going, I'll get out there if I mislabel myself as this bigger band. But then what's your plan from there? Now some guy in Melbourne's heard your song, but he's got nothing to do with what do I do with that info? I like the song, sounds different to what I think of Pantera as, but all right. Yeah. That was the LimeWire years or the Napster days.
Maybe it was a virtual band.
Oh my God, like Gorillaz?
That's
the band we're talking about?
Exactly. That's what I was going for.
I don't know if people got their heads around this yet. This band are all cartoons. It hasn't been done since the Archies. It probably has, but the Archies were the first cartoon band to have a #1 hit with.
What about the hamster dance?
Oh, the hamster.
Does that count?
Would have been around that time. Or the frog.
Crazy Frog, yeah.
Yeah, Axel F.
Can you do the Crazy Frog? Like,
man, nee. Yeah, I can do everything.
A man of 100 voices.
Yeah, well, 1,000 noises, but, I go by many names. The man of 1,000 names as well. They're just two of them. Matt's another. DJ Levins, sometimes people call me that, but I'm like, that's
at Meredith.
That's not me at all.
I didn't play Beaver.
No, yeah. Normally it's with a threatening tone. I was the same as you, actually, with all the Andrews. There was a lot of Matts.
It's Stewie.
So I got Stewie, Stew Dog. That's what a lot of people used to call me.
I got Lev Dog eventually.
Lev
as well,
Dog,
so
yeah.
it works.
That just seems like a pretty common thing. Just
Put
cut the
dog
surname in
on it.
half.
Yep.
Chuck a dog on there. Chuck a dog on it.
Put a dog on it, mate.
Couldn't be any more Aussie than that.
So yeah, I was on my way to retreat, and I'd seen this clip on the weekend on Channel V or something like that, and it was this fully animated clip, and it was the guy from Blur singing out of this dead-eyed cartoon character, and then in the middle of the clip, the drummer suddenly rises out of him this big blue rapper, and it's the voice I instantly recognize as Del the Funky Homo Sapien, most famous for the song Mr. Dobalina.
Mr. Bob Dobalina.
Exactly. Another name that people have called you by over the years.
Many times.
I was like, what is this? What is this? Oh my God. And I remember asking to log on to the internet and looking up Gorillaz and figuring out that it was a project of Damon Albarn and this guy called Dan the Automator. And he was a producer that I was obsessed with in high school. He basically only did one-off projects with either rappers or different producers or DJs.
Was he in Peeping Tom with Mike Patton, I think?
He did Lovage with Mike Patton.
Right.
Which was like a kind of throwback kind of romantic. It was him, Mike Patton, and a singer of a band called Elysian Fields.
Right.
And with Kid Koala DJing, scratching as well on it. And it was it's kind of throwback to 60s kind of crooner stuff, but with hip hop production.
I've got to look into that.
It's pretty good. I'm sure a lot of these kind of concept albums from the 90s and early 2000s have dated pretty badly.
Yeah.
But yeah, Gorillaz I just thought was just another one of those things because the entirety of it is produced by Dan the Automator. He did Handsome Boy Modeling School, Dr. Octagon, all these kind of fringe hip hop projects that when you are getting into hip hop, it's amazing because it's and they're collaborating with indie artists. So all my friends who like indie will be less judgmental of me for suddenly listening to rap, which is my biggest problem as a 16-year-old.
Right.
Yeah.
Rap was uncool then still?
Well, it was we used to make fun, call everyone who liked rap wiggers.
Right. Yeah. No, I do
which is
remember that.
Definitely problematic.
Yeah. No good.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're similar vintage, and I remember it probably was in the end of high school was becoming pretty acceptable, but mainly that was pretty mainstream stuff. It would be stuff like Eminem. Who else was big?
Oh, Jurassic 5 was a big
Jurassic
one.
5,
They got played on Triple J, and
that's What's Golden?
Yeah. And the album before that, and then it's pretty easy to go from Jurassic 5 to Dan the Automator via their producers, Cut Chemist and Newmark. Collaborated with DJ Shadow, as did Dan the Automator.
Right.
So that was this a massive world that had so many collaborations that once. And I worked above a Borders, which is a bookstore that came from America and was open in Australia for 5 years or something like that.
You could be in there. You could read magazines on a couch in there.
But they had an incredible imported hip hop section, right. And so when I, perfect timing, I had a weekend job and was getting into hip hop in a almost internet, pre-internet kind of world. And so I would just I remember looking at the back of every CD and seeing the producer credits. And if I ever saw Dan the Automator or Cut Chemist or DJ Shadow, I would get it. And so that's how I initially got into hip hop. And then that eventually led me to good hip hop. But at the time, this was my favorite kind of shit. So Gorillaz, I thought, was just another big collaboration, and it was, but I thought it was a one-off thing that Dan the Automator brought on. But in actuality, it was Damon Albarn and Jamie Hewlett, and Damon Albarn got Dan the Automator to produce this one album. You had a few members a few people, frequent collaborators of Dan the Automator join them on the Gorillaz album. So Kid Koala does some scratching on it. He's a Canadian DJ. You have Del the Funky Homo Sapien. He'd just done Deltron 3030 with Dan the Automator. I'm just rattling off weird. These could be Marvel apes for all Matt knows.
These nearly all of these names ring bells, but I'm not connecting them to any firm musical memories. But I know the words. Kid Koala. So it's interesting. Yeah, Kid Koala is much like a Tank Girl, a Canadian koala,
and he also drew his own comic books. In fact, two of his albums are a comic book with a soundtrack of him doing turntablist weird fun noises. But the final member of Gorillaz, Noodle, is on the first album was voiced by someone called Miho Hattori. And she was, and this is going to open up another massive path of music that I used to love when I was in high school. She was in a band called Chibo Mato, and they were signed to the Beastie Boys label Grand Royal. And at one point, Sean Lennon was in Chiba Mato as well. And so she's a Japanese vocalist. And so she does all of Noodle's vocals on the first album of Gorillaz. So the most known one is the 2000 song.
Yep.
You got the cool. Here you go. That's her singing.
That's been in my head all day.
It's one of the best songs off that first album.
Yeah, it's a good tune.
So that album comes out, I find the Clint Eastwood single on the way to that Year 11 retreat, and we've all got Discmans, and so like that gets passed around. It's like 4 songs or something like that, and then of course back then, like, you know, it would be like $5 or $10 to get a single. $20 if you're an idiot like me who used to buy import singles from Red Eye. But the best thing about all of the Gorillaz singles in the lead up to their album is that there was like great artwork and stickers and like the branding, even just the logo of Gorillaz I thought was really cool. But when you put the CD in your computer, it was like an interactive CD-ROM. And I remember one of them had like a tour of Kong Studios. Right. Another one had all these like fake interview cartoons with all the members. And it was just all this like really cool lore that didn't really tell you much of a story, but it did kind of give you a little bit of character information behind the people who have supposedly made this music.
And that all sort of connects up through the film clips. They continue the story
That's
along.
Right. Yeah. Which features like Jamie Hewlett's animation, like designs in like these fully animated cartoons.
So what have we got up to? The band sort of formed. Noodles just been delivered in a package, and they play together. We should say so. The reason for Russell's glowing eyes is because he's got the souls within him.
Yep.
But the reason for 2D's black eyes is because Murdock drove a car into his face,
and then that's how he lost one eye. And then he was in a car accident in which Murdock was the driver,
trying to impress some girls.
Yeah, and he lost his other eye in that. Apparently he has like some weird condition where he's like the blood vessels have burst in his eye. So all you can see is he can see fine. It's a bit blurry, but we can only see the black.
Big black eyes. Yeah. So then, and then they're recording out of Kong. So they've got, is it 4 phases that we're up to at the moment?
So this is just the first album. I mean, which I loved when I was in late high school. I think it was a weird album because it was only like 2 hip hop songs on it. The rest of it was like, you know, this kind of experimental, more electronic sounding Damon Albarn from Blur, just kind of doing weird stuff. But I was just obsessed with Gorillaz, and I bought every single single, import singles. I then bought an album that collected all of the B-sides from the singles that I already had called G-sides. And then I've got a dub version of the Gorillaz album called Laker Come Home. And it was like a reggae and dub version of the Gorillaz album. And these are all on Apple Music and Spotify now if you want to listen to them.
We were just talking about Laker the other day.
Yeah.
Oh, the other episode about Laker the dog, Russian dog who's gone out to space and never come back. Apparently there's a comic book character based on it called Cosmo.
Yeah. In Muttons and Marvel one, yeah.
Bloody hell, you know everything about everything. Would that be fair to say?
No, just like this specific era of hip hop and music, indie rock and hip hop. It's very like it'll never leave my head for some reason. And then comic books.
It's the formative years. That's probably why.
We need to somehow have a video game connection. I was very upset that I wasn't able to do Donkey Kong, but I would have gone way more obscure.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
listening to that, I was like, why aren't they talking about the Game Boy Advance one where you control the left and right hand of Donkey Kong as he jumps up and down the pegboard?
You would have found the Donkey Kong episode very frustrating. We did not delve deep into it at all. But we did learn about the Popeye connection.
You should play Donkey Kong Tropical Beat, which is one that it's a platformer, just like the Donkey Kong Country games, except you control Donkey Kong by using conga drums.
That sounds sick.
If you hit both, he jumps. If you go on the left or on the right one, yeah, it's incredible.
You want to come back and next time and do a deep dive into Donkey Kong?
I have so much monkey love. It's almost a shame that we chose something that doesn't actually involve monkeys.
I genuinely, in my head, I was remembering the cartoons of them being gorillas.
Yeah,
like.
So there was a lot of monkey imagery, and then the dub album I was talking about was a collaboration with a group called Space Monkeys. So that's a monkey reference for you.
Yes.
But that first album sold really well, and it was really, really popular, and so they worked out how to like turn it into a live show, and so they would perform with like holograms. And they did like a tour of the States where Damon Albarn and the band would perform behind a screen, and then there would be projections of the cartoons performing. I never got to see it. I would have loved to have seen it.
Well, they're about to go on to another tour, or maybe they've just started a current tour, and I read one headline, didn't click on the bloody link, but it said might be their last tour for 10 years.
Yeah, right. Well, so there have been massive hiatuses, hiati. In between all their acts. Demon Days is their second album, and that's probably their most popular. It has the Feel Good Inc. song, which is definitely their biggest hit.
Is that with De La Soul?
Yeah, and so this is where I stopped being as into them, because that one, they stopped working with Dan the Automator as producer, and then they start working with Danger Mouse, who was most famous for doing
The Grey album.
That's right, the Grey album, which was the mashup of the Black album by Jay-Z and the White album by the Beatles, which is actually a lot better than that sounds like it should be.
Yeah. And it got big because that was just a bootleg thing, right?
Thing, yeah. It was enormous. It blew up.
And then he end up he paired up with Shins Man to do
Shins Man?
The guy from the Shins.
Oh, right. Okay, sure. I mean, his most popular project outside of Gorillaz was Gnarls Barkley with CeeLo.
No. Yep. And then he's done a project with Mr. Shins as well.
Right, cool. You can look it up. Mr. Shins, Danger Mouse. But I was like, oh, cool. Like, every Gorillaz album is going to be Damon Albarn working with another a producer, and it will be like this very kind of singular thing. But they just kept expanding how many guests would be on each album. And I think Demon Days is cool. There's like, the song with De La Soul. It makes total sense for them to show up when they do on that song. There's a song with the dude from Happy Mondays, that Dare song.
Oh, yeah.
It's coming up, it's there.
Broken Bells. That's the...
What's it called?
Broken Bells?
Broken Bells. I never
That's
listened to that.
Danger Mouse and James Mercer from the Shins.
Good stuff?
Yeah, I think I like some of it a lot. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably as you'd expect it to be. It's still pretty Shinsy.
When did you mellow down from Pantera to Mr. Shins?
It was, I have a foot in both camps these days.
2 words, Levins, Garden State.
Yeah, no doubt. That probably was, I did like that movie at the time. I haven't seen it since.
Natalie Portman famously...
in the doctor's waiting.
Yeah, tells Zach Braff to listen to the Shins. It'll change his life or something like that.
And I think that scene probably changed the Shins' life because...
Definitely.
Yeah, I think that was already an old song at that point, but I'm pretty sure it...
Was it like Kissing the
helped break
Lipless?
them.
Was that one?
It was...
No one cares.
But the person who does care is yelling at their iPod.
Google Garden State Shins. Oh, get off Wikipedia. He loves Wikipedia.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it up. People should check it out. New slang.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, I mean, it'll change your life. Listen to this. That's the second best listen to this scene in film. The first being, of course, Back to the Future.
Oh, of course. Yep.
So you jumped off, and this is classic DJ Levins. When a band is getting big, they're too big for Levins.
No, I definitely liked their biggest album, so you can't claim tall poppy syndrome. This isn't like when I jumped off the Powderfinger train in 2002, Matt.
So you jumped off Powderfinger, what, Odyssey number 5?
Yeah, fucking oath.
Yeah.
I loved DAF.
Yeah.
Cascading Down, whatever that song was.
Yeah, DAF, and I was right into something about Jesus, JC.
Oh, that was a great song.
That was a great song, yeah.
And the one about Ray Martin. Is that You Again, Ray?
Oh, yeah, that's a good song.
But then These Days, get out of here.
I mean, it was beautiful.
You know what was beautiful? The Hoods covering it.
Oh, yeah, okay. Was that for a Triple J thing?
No, in their biggest song, Hilltop Hoods, they sing These Days Turned Out. No, it's real bad.
Right.
But imagine that with the Adelaide Symphony Orchestra.
That Monday night footy with my hoodie at the high dive, something like that. I remember. Look, I could lay down some. So you jumped off anyway. That bit's getting cut for sure. You jumped off.
No.
You jumped off at their peak. Have you dipped back in since? Have you been following the lore at all?
Yeah, well, so I always loved the cartoons and I loved all Jamie Hewlett's drawings. A friend gave me a book called The Rise of the Ogre, which came out just after Demon Days, and it was like just that little bit too late. And I was like, oh, this is cool, but I don't care about reading these fake interviews with these cartoon characters. And then recently on the Planet Broadcasting Great Mates group, of which I am the admin.
Dadmin, right?
The Dadmin, sorry. There was a Gorillaz thread, and I kind of piped in and was like, I used to love those first two albums, but there's something about how many collaborations there were. Like, the album Plastic Beach, which I've since gone back and listened to and I really like, but there's like every single song has 2 to 3 guest artists on it.
Right.
And it became less this kind of like strange and kind of like unified concept album to them just being like this big pop project that Damon Albarn was doing. It just is very different thing to what I signed up for.
Right. Well, I think it sounds like their new album has gone back to the... Well,
yeah.
It's very sparse in terms of collaborations.
Yeah, but still has a fucking Snoop Dogg collaboration. Like, the world is good for Snoop Dogg collaborations. I don't understand why people keep going like, who needs more money? Snoop Dogg. He needs more of that white money.
He does do that. He would have more feats than anyone else, I reckon.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Loves
the feat.
There are some good ones, but it is just like, I don't need to hear him on a song with
What are you
Damon
thinking?
Albarn.
You thinking Candy Girl or whatever by...
California Girls?
California Girls.
By Katy Perry? That's a good one.
Yeah. That's big.
Yeah. Daisy Dukes, bikinis on top.
Great.
But he actually shows up on that new album. So does De La Soul. They can't do a. I can't remember. I was listening to a whole bunch of recent Gorillaz today, and there's a De La Soul song. I'm like, why do they keep doing songs that it just gets progressively worse and worse? Their collaborations post Feel Good Inc. In my opinion,
They've also played a Meredith, much like you.
Did they play a
De La
Bieber
Soul.
song?
No, they didn't.
So Geelong was happy about it.
Yeah, Geelong were right into it. So when they have these collaborations, how do they make that work with the 4-piece cartoon band?
So they went on this massive tour, and this is where, like, this is just after Plastic Beach, which was their third album. And they had like so many guests. They had rappers. They had the Hypnotic Brass Ensemble from New Orleans. They had so many like different performers and musicians on stage. And Jamie Hewlett, of course, half of the backbone of Gorillaz, said there's quotes where he thought his role in the group was getting smaller and smaller, and he even felt that the screen in which his animations are getting projected on were getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And he checked and learnt that they weren't. They were the same size they've always been. But he basically, like, they had the Gorillaz split and that's why we have this very, very long hiatus between 2010 and 2016 or something like that.
Yep.
And then there's all these film clips in there, and because they tell the story of the band via film clips, and this book that I was given, the Rise of the Ogre, which I learnt is actually worth heaps of money because it's out of print now. But I'm going to hold on to it, man. Because now I like Gorillaz again.
Yes, you're back in.
Because I shared a video with you, which was shared in the Great Mates group. And it's this incredible, like, just explanation of all the lore.
Yeah, real fast-talking American man.
And none of the boring history like I've been talking about of like who produced this and who collaborated with who. It's all of this fictitious story of how the characters met and what they were doing between each album, because the Gorillaz, in like the 4 of them, break up after each album, and then there's these great stories of how they found each other again before recording another album.
Yeah, like at one point in a few years in, Noodle goes missing, but Murdock has a little bit of her DNA, so he creates a robot, cyborg version of her. And then, so she's in the band for a while, but then we find out that the real Noodle's out there still.
Yeah, and then Russell leaves for a while, and then he just walks back to Plastic Beach,
which
through
is
the ocean.
And Plastic Beach is an island. Like, they leave Kong's studio and set up, Murdock sets up a new base on this rubbish island in the middle of the ocean, which he paints pink or orange. And it looks like a little, sort of almost like a little oasis in the middle of the sea.
The clips are amazing because every clip chooses a different style of animation. They've had very 3D looking, classic cartoon, really scratchy cartoon, almost claymation looking stuff. That's still my favorite thing about it is the medium of the cartoon that they use. And it's so weird to me that they haven't had a movie or a TV series or a comic book.
Yeah, that is weird. You'd think a comic book at least, but it does sound like there's maybe a TV show in the works. I read maybe next year even.
Yeah, but they haven't got a studio or anything involved. It's just something they want to do.
Right.
But they were meant to do a movie like at the height of their, like in between Demon Days and Plastic Beach, but they just kind of didn't because they started meeting with Hollywood types and were turned off the idea. Yeah.
Damn. Yeah, it feels like they should be able to make it happen.
Yeah, 100%. Like it's all the laws there, the characters are set up, the fan base is there. They have an amazing soundtrack.
I think maybe my favorite thing about all that lore was the Russell, the drummer.
Yep.
When he, like you were about to say, went to walk through the ocean and then swim to Plastic Beach, this island in the middle of the ocean. He
inhales this toxic waste and becomes gigantic.
It's so cool.
Yeah. And then so like for an entire album, he's just enormous and lies on top of their house.
Yeah, he's big for quite a while. And then I think I was half zoned out, but then he ended up in North Korea.
He gets captured by North Korea. They think he's the equivalent of their Godzilla. And then because he's so malnourished while in North Korea, he returns to his regular size and they release him. It's so silly and fun.
Yeah.
And then Murdock is like this awful dude who's just responsible for all the bad shit that happens to all of them, especially 2D. So when you asked me, what do you want to do? I was going to suggest the character of Mojo Jojo from Powerpuff Girls. He's one of my favorite cartoon villains. He's a monkey with an enormous brain. He's one of the bad guys in Powerpuff Girls, and he has a brilliant voice actor. But I actually do get to talk about him briefly in this because there is a really funny and strong connection to Powerpuff Girls with the Gorillaz now. Actually, 2D wears a Mojo Jojo T-shirt in one of their like promo stills from like very early on in their career. But in like the lore now, Murdock has like been imprisoned, and so they've replaced him with a new member who plays bass now, and the new member is a Powerpuff Girls like C-list villain called Ace.
Really?
From, like, the Gangrene Gang, and he's like this like greaser dude with like green skin, and he's just in Gorillaz now.
I love shared universes so much.
Me too, yeah. And there's like references in that new clip where it's 2D kind of like skating around, and if you watch that new clip, he has white eyes now because he is happy now that Murdock's not in his life anymore.
Oh, so the blackness was... I love... That's so cool.
Yeah, it's such fun lore. And if you really want to get into it, I'll look up who made it. I sent you the links earlier.
Yeah, I'll put it out in the on the social media after this.
But it's insane. It's so long. The lore is incredibly deep.
It's long and they jump around. Like they'll throw something away and just change it back or whatever.
Yeah, they rewrite their own histories a lot.
If it's not working anymore. It looked like in the video it talked about, I think it was the end of maybe phase 3. They, for whatever reason, cancelled the end of it. So
yeah, they didn't do the last film clip.
So there was an arc that was coming to a close and they just didn't do it. But the guy who put together this video found the...
Found Flicks is the account.
Found Flicks. And he found the flicks and the concept art for that film clip. So he sort of walked us through what it would have been, but then they sort of retconned it and started again.
Yeah, it's crazy, and that video is so amazing. It's made me fall in love with the project so much more than I ever have now. I think I really want to rewatch all the clips and follow the story for myself, and actually read that book my friend gave me ages ago instead of putting it on eBay.
Yeah, take it down. Even though I'm got the winning bid so far, but who do you reckon is your favorite member? Fictional.
Noodle was originally because I was a massive Miho Hattori fan. Tuba Mato, one of my favorite bands of that era. And she has lots. She did a bossa nova album with Smokey Robinson, the Beck's guitarist.
Yeah,
with Smokey and Miho. She's awesome. She's got so many great releases, and I just like because she was associated with that character. Noodle was always my favorite, but I think Russell as well because Dell was associated with that character, and Dell was like one of his friends who was killed.
Yeah, that's right. So he was one of the souls and that's why Dell's when he collaborated, that was coming out of the Russell character.
Yeah, and then so Dell isn't on the second album, and they explain that. Like the Grim Reaper severs Dell's connection with Russell, and that's why he doesn't like it wasn't a contractual thing. It was the Grim Reaper's fault, right?
But his eyes still glowed even though he got the souls taken away.
I love it. It's so it's one of those things where it's like this very cool looking, often funny visual behind what is predominantly known as a music project, but especially when laid out in this video, like the realization of how deep the lore goes and how amazing the storytelling is through those clips is really, really surreal.
Every phase seems to have a new villain as well.
Yeah.
Which is a fun thing. So I guess the Grim Reaper was the villain briefly. But then there was it's sort of like the loser fifth horseman from the
That's right. Yeah.
the four deadly horsemen of the apocalypse.
And he was Flatulence.
Flatulence. Yeah, so they'll just do real dumb jokes sometimes as well, which is funny. Like it's almost like they're taking it seriously sometimes, and then they'll do something like that, and you're like, oh no, this is all just a bit of fun.
Because the lyrics, I mean, certainly not on my, like, there's one song about electric jellyfish or something, which is kind of funny. But beyond that, like, it's mostly like very serious lyrical content. So you don't get that humor through the music itself. It's all additional through the clips and back matter.
I did read that, I don't know if it was a theory or if they've actually said this, but they, like a lot of the serious lyrical content, that's part of the reason why they like the idea of the cartoons, because it's a way to make it more palatable for younger generations to hear these kind of
it's pretty dark
themes.
Yeah, and it's it's a very morose sounding Damon Albarn for the most part. A lot of these kind of like sad falsetto, but this new album, that lead single for it is like very, very upbeat and fun and funky, and I think that's just because Murdock isn't in the band anymore. Right. Yeah.
Is it, so that's why they killed him off? Because
he's in prison.
Oh, prison.
And there's actually a thing on Facebook where you can chat with him, and you can basically, in order to help him, he can't escape, but you can help him get more respect in prison, and you do that by like doing like this Mad Lib of like where you put in text to insult one of the higher up criminals in prison there, and like as his respect goes up, like you can help him out.
Oh, that's so funny. I did read part of an interview with him from prison about the new album as well, which is interesting. Like, I was one of the big websites. It's funny how they'll play along with it. Just even though they, why wouldn't they be like,
oh, totally, yeah, this thing which clearly isn't real.
Yeah, but they just play it off like it's entirely real, which is fun.
It adds to it. Everyone's in on the joke. That's why it's so good.
What's that website?
And it's very surprising that there aren't lots of copycats as well. Like, why that we haven't seen different genre takes on the Gorillaz idea.
Yeah.
There was that artist Cutie a while ago, which is like a virtual reality singer, but that was a lot more kind of underground.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. There's got to have been others, but
certainly not on the same level as Gorillaz.
No, I'm sure there's a metal.
Metalocalypse. But they had their own TV show that was spinning out of that.
Right.
What's his name? Brendan Small, who was a voice artist and comedian, but also like a guitar obsessed metalhead. And if you like that kind of music, it is actually like really well put together, the Metalocalypse stuff. You listen to that much?
No, I've seen a few clips that are around on social media.
Another suggestion, because Metalocalypse is an Adult Swim show. And one of my favorite Adult Swim shows is Venture Brothers.
Oh, yeah?
You'd love that show. Anyone listening right now would love it. I don't think there's anyone in the world who would not love Venture Brothers. It's one of the...
I've never even heard of it.
It's so good. It started out as a parody of like Johnny Quest and Hardy Boys, but now it's like kind of like it becomes like this kind of show about failure and living up to your expectations of your family lineage and stuff like that. But it's also like, a superhero comedy.
Yeah, great. Where do you find that in Australia?
You can buy it on iTunes.
Sick.
And that's where you can get the best quality versions. But if you live in America, you can stream it pretty much the entire thing for free on the Adult Swim website. But there's a great ape, a few monkey characters in there. One of them is called King Ape. And there's a great scene where he's basically like the king of this prison, and he's like this big, funny gay ape who is sent like men as bribery. So he gets sent like a man-shaped cake, and they're saying like he's like, it's not marzipan, it's Tarzapan. That's all I remember. Stuff. Good stuff.
We're probably running out of time. You gotta go DJ a big event.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be
Meredith.
I could say that any
back.
Yeah, are they? I could say that about you any day of the week, though, right?
Yesterday, if you said that, I was DJing at a 90s long lunch in Sydney for predominantly 60 plus people, and every 90 seconds they were complaining about the music being too loud, so I couldn't even hear the music I was playing. So yesterday, maybe not so much.
That's a good gig, right? You're just getting paid to stand there.
Well, imagine if you were doing a stand-up gig,
But
unmiked, and you had to whisper.
yeah, that's more brutal, right? That's definitely more brutal.
Well, but then people are just like, why is that guy talking to himself?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, I mean, could you just turn your jokes down a bit? They're disturbing our conversation. Yeah, all right. Maybe that doesn't sound great, but I imagine you wouldn't have taken you long before you got onto the Great Mates Facebook group and just started scrolling through all the great chats.
Yeah, we decided just like deleting people's posts. That's what I do when I'm bored.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the last few episodes have been trying to get the guests to rename the band. Well, in the past, the movies, but this week the band. What if you could rename them? What do you think would be more appropriate name for Gorillaz? Seeing as they're not Gorillaz.
Yeah. Well, they actually put out an album called Humans, so they've already beaten us to what I think they could be called.
Humans is right with a Z.
Yeah.
That was last year, right?
And there actually was a band, like an Aqua ripoff in the 90s called Cartoons with a Z.
Oh, damn it. There's not a lot of options left.
I think Gorillaz, even though, they're not Gorillaz, I think, if the other spelling of gorilla definitely plays a big factor of what they are. They're kind of punk beginnings and almost the punk idea behind the concept.
Do you know why they went with Gorillaz?
I'm sure I glossed over it. It wasn't as interesting as you would hope.
Yeah.
It sounds cool.
Yeah, it does.
Would you rename them something else?
No, certainly not. I'll never. Well, yeah.
What about the Shins?
The Shins. The
Shins 2.
Shins 2, that's good. Yeah. They are, they've got a certain Shinsy quality. Well, that brings us to what is probably your favorite segment on the show.
Oh, absolutely.
I assume.
Yeah.
It is the Primate Sporting Mascot segment, which I have to read off the screen because I still can't remember it, but that's a catchy name, obviously.
Well, it doesn't have. You don't say like mascot A to mascot Z, so it's hard to remember.
That's true. I need a catchy word jingle.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll think about that. If anyone's got any suggestions, please let me know. Are you into sport at all? You're into everything.
I'm not, but when I grew up, my grandparents used to always get me the NRL trading cards. And I loved all the mascots. That was like, you find entertainment in even the things that you don't want. So instead of looking at these hairy football players, I'd be like, oh, this is all the different mascots. And so I have like a weird ranking of mascot NRL mascots. Right. Have you had much NRL mascot discussion in here? It's all in fucking AFL.
Yeah, it's mainly been AFL and American sports.
Right.
What's yeah, because some of them are interesting, like Melbourne's team, the Storm.
Well, that's not interesting.
It's like a lightning guy, right?
No. It's just the Melbourne Storm is just a dude. So like everyone else is like an animal of some kind. Like, so I live in Parramatta, and we've got Parramatta Eels, and so it's he's Sparky, and so it's there's a male and female Sparky, and it's a big eel with like electric currents. They're like bright blue and yellow, and then obviously like most of the teams are pretty self-explanatory, like the Roosters and
I'm a Tigers man.
Rabbitohs.
So he'd be a Tiger, I guess.
But Melbourne Storm is just a guy. It's like the Melbourne Storm, and it's just a guy in like a kind of like superhero costume, but he's like just an ochre dude.
That's such a Melbourne cop out. The Carlton in the AFL's a superhero, Captain Carlton or something like that. That's no fun.
But it's just so weird when everyone else has like these, like animal ones. It's like, oh, you can just be a guy. And his name is Storm Man.
Oh, no. That's no good at all.
A superhero whose only superpower seems to be being a classic Aussie larrikin. Fuck. And there was another, they tried to make a new one for Melbourne Storm called just Boom. And
Boom.
Yeah. And I can show you what he looks like if you want. But he sucks too.
After the classic POD song?
Of course.
Ready or not.
Oh my God. And he's like, I guess he's like some kind of cat.
Yeah, that's
electric cat.
That looks like it was done
in about 10 minutes.
Yeah, 10 minutes in a primary school art class.
Cronulla Sharks, you have rappers, MC Hammerhead and Reefy.
Oh, they got 3.
2.
Oh,
MC Hammerhead.
Okay.
Or do you think it was MC Hammer, Head, and Reefy?
Yes. I mean, that's what any sane person would have thought.
I'm trying the Newcastle Knights is just a knight, which is pretty fun. Okay. Yeah, and then the Canberra Raiders has a Viking, which is pretty cool too.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
animals are where it's at.
I like the Raiders. I like their colours and everything. They're cool.
Yeah.
Rabbitohs. I think the NRL has I feel like the AFL for the most part are pretty boring animal mascots, but the NRL's got rabbits and chickens and
Yeah.
like real unlikely.
The Illawarra Dragons, they have the same mascot as St. George Bank. Like it's the same guy.
Yeah.
That's
Love a corporate crossover.
I think that automatically makes it the worst.
Yeah, that is no good. Yeah, that's a bummer. They should be, because they're the Saints as well, right?
Yeah.
So they could be like my team in the AFL.
But it's St. George Bank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's too tight. I mean, as long as they're paying a lot of money, I guess.
Yeah.
How much is the price of your soul?
Just giving everyone in the audience, in the crowd, just cheap loans.
Oh, really? Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, maybe.
I'll take a cheap loan, thank you. Maybe I'll change teams. The Primate Sporting Mascot this week has been sent in by a listener whose name I've struggled to pronounce on the show before, I think. But I looked up a YouTube video on how to pronounce it.
Just like I did with macaques, but I still wasn't sure.
Well, the problem was I saw two different videos and they gave two different pronunciations. One was an American guy and he said it's Georgie. It's spelled Gyorgy. But I found another video that said it's pronounced Georgie.
Right.
So it's one of those, I think, hopefully. Anyway, they messaged me on Instagram saying, in reference to your primate mascots, I have a supporter group mascot. I give you the Seattle Sounders of the Major League Soccer and their supporters group, Gorilla FC. She found a website, but it doesn't give any explanation as to why it's a gorilla. So it's not even the team. So there's a team, the Seattle soccer team is called the Seattle Sounders, which I guess is like the Seattle Sound, like grunge.
Okay.
I guess. I haven't looked into
just
that.
their mascot's just someone in flannelette.
Yeah, that's right. Which is smart. If you want to get a low-key, cheap mascot. But then they've got a supporter group who sits in a certain part of the stand and they're an official supporter group of the team and they're called Gorilla FC. And Gorilla FC stands for Gorilla Football Collective.
Right.
Which is confusing to me. So I found their website. It's got no explanation why they're the gorillas.
What is the costume like?
Well, then it doesn't seem like anyone. They'll have flags with gorillas on them and stuff.
But that's not really a mascot.
Yeah, it's strange.
Sorry, he or he.
Well, look, I think they were trying to help me out because I'm running very low on options. Their website does say Gorilla FC is opposed to acts of racism, sexism, and homophobia. Every fan of the Sounders is welcome within our community, and we accept all who support with us.
Oh, I guess they are okay after all.
Yeah, it seems like they're all right. So if you are in Seattle, go join Gorilla FC. I'm so confused by that. It's like having a mascot for a group of supporters that is different to your team's mascot.
Maybe they were like, what is a sounder?
Right.
Let's just make our own actual mascot.
Yeah, well, I think that's probably what they should send a letter to the team and say, this Sounders thing is not anything. We want something we can draw. We want our kids to be able to draw this.
Mascots can't just be a noise.
Yeah. Or Sounders. Or the thing that makes this sound.
So just a bunch of amps.
Yeah.
That's actually really cool.
If you have like an amp with arms and legs.
Like a big, cuddly amp.
That's great.
Yeah, okay. All right. Let's pitch it.
I'm going to write an email soon after we stop recording this. So let's turn me right around. Get Marshall involved.
Yep.
Oh, that'd be sick.
And then they can all stack together and then the team run through them.
Knock over the stack.
So good.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, the team come out with guitars and stuff and they smash through the Marshall stack. That's really cool. All right, I think we'll solve some problems there. And here's another new segment, and I think you're going to enjoy this. It's called Circus Watch.
Uh-huh.
I haven't got a jingle for it, but you can imagine what one would sound like.
So
you are good.
I'm on the way there.
All right, that's a good start.
If anyone wants to do it, I got you started.
But I'm asking people to email in to primatespod.com. No, primatespod@gmail.com if they've got any connection to Andy Serkis at all, because he's sort of our patron saint.
Mm-hmm.
He's the guy who puts primates on the big screen. He's done King Kong. He's done the best of them all, Caesar, the king of the apes.
Yep.
Even more so. Like, I reckon if King Kong took on Caesar, Caesar wins.
Reckon we'll see that before we die?
I really hope so. And it'll be Andy Serkis playing all parts.
Yeah, how far away from me are we from a Christmas with the Clump style movie where he plays multiple characters?
I hope. I hadn't even considered
Or
that.
like the circus verse where it's all of his characters. So you got Gollum, you have Captain Haddock, you got the dude with
the arm that's was over that South African guy.
Ulysses Claw.
Oh, that was a sweet character in Black Panther.
Mm.
That is appropriate because I tweeted out asking if anyone had had any direct connections to circus because we want to get him on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And Mike Sabia said he saw him in Black Panther one time. If that helps, and obviously it does help. That feels like it's not a big in, but that's a little. He's opened the door slightly there for us.
So we've been talking about Gorillaz, who for every little reference in the music or any reference to a character, like a website or a tour of something, or like basically everything that they mention exists somewhere online. You know what I mean? There's no flippant little references that hasn't been expanded upon by the members of the band somewhere online.
Right.
And one of the biggest tragedies of the year, I think, is that Ulysses Claw, Andy Serkis's character in Black Panther, mentions that he has a SoundCloud in Black Panther, and no one ever created a Ulysses Claw SoundCloud.
Why not? That feels like that's an obvious time.
Like how could we have a weird kind of like Atari Teenage Riot or kind of noise, Andy Serkis making like weird noise rap?
Oh, that should happen.
Should exist.
Have you considered doing that? Because that would go big.
I'm sure someone tried. I think it's just like, no, it's not circus. I'm out.
Right. It needs to be actual circus. So, I mean, you could take Caesar sounds from Rise of the Planet of the Apes, maybe.
I reckon circus is a bit mad, right? I actually want to see what kind of music he would put together. So I'm going to wait it out.
Okay. Well, maybe that's part. If we ever get him on, we'll ask him, please make that SoundCloud. Claw, in the style of Claw. I was looking for a fact because last week, because in lieu of any real direct connections, I'm just filling the time in Circus Watch with some facts. Last week, I read that he has sex 4 to 5 times a day.
What?
This week.
In character?
I don't know.
Like he has sex with himself playing a mate?
I mean, I didn't get the chance. That's another question I might put to him. I believe it's
this is a fact that
I believe so. I read a headline to an article. I really should click on these links. I'm going to do that before next week, maybe. This is a fact, a less exciting fact. This is a quote from him listed on IMDb. It says, "I do feel incredibly liberated when I'm inside another's skin. Basically, and so method does afford you that hugely."
So that links to him having sex with.
Well, it doesn't necessarily.
Being in someone else's skin.
That's not what I was.
That's what I'm one of. I've been in the mind of Circus before. I know what he's talking about.
Wow, I genuinely wasn't even connecting those two. Do you think?
Yeah.
This Circus verse just got a little bigger in my pants. And another little edit there. I think. Before we go on to, at the end of the show, we go through some patrons on the Do Go On Podcast Network's Patreon. We'll go through a few of the patrons' favorite primates.
Because it's grown so much now that you can't just keep them in Do Go On. You have to.
No, they're on Do Go On now. They're on Book Cheat as well, Dave's book podcast. But before we do that, I'd love to hear where are you at with Gorillaz? How would you rate their career so far? Give them a score out of bananas somehow.
Yep. Well, okay. So I threw out the peel. Let's just say I enjoyed the fruit that they released in the early 2000s, and then I tossed the peel away in a bin. And then upon discovering that they have actually been releasing quite a lot of good music and all this lore that I had no idea existed, I've slipped on that very banana peel, Matt.
Slip back in.
Yep, I'm slipped right back in, and I'm because of this podcast and because of recent kind of re-listening, I'm absolutely a Gorillaz fan again.
This is definitely because I was super casual listening. I've listened through their back catalogue over the last few days, and I couldn't believe how many songs of theirs I know. They've got so many hits that have just seeped in, but so many that I was unfamiliar with because I don't think I've ever sat through a whole album. So. There's a heap of good stuff in there. If of the 4 characters, your favorite is Noodles. Is that the one you relate to the most?
I think Noodle has the coolest designs,
right?
And fashion. I think Jamie Hewlett does. I love one of my favorite things is when a very talented artist who has an eye for fashion is on a comic book. And I wish Jamie Hewlett did interiors on comics still. because I love his fashion designs. And it's good seeing what he puts together for all the characters. But Noodle always gets the best stuff.
It's a pretty distinctive style. His style, is it?
Yeah, definitely.
So you was he influential?
Yeah, I mean, more so in street art. I
Right.
think a lot of your bathing apes and that kind of stuff definitely took a lot of inspiration from Jamie Hewlett's cartoons and imagery. But yeah, I would love for more people to draw comics like him. If I can't get him drawing comic books, someone else can do it.
Now, we normally do this thing where we compare ourselves to the apes.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have any apes necessarily, but Noodle, right? Noodles.
Mm-hmm.
Noodle?
It's Noodle.
Noodle.
Singular.
So apparently chimps and humans share about 98% DNA.
Mm-hmm.
How much of yourself as a percentage do you see in Noodle?
Extremely low.
Yeah.
I think if anyone knows I'm kidding myself if I say anything above 20%.
And what is that 20%? What are you...
So
so it's kind of almost like you've got 20% self-love.
I reckon Noodle's favorite member of Gorillaz is Noodle. So
Right.
that's the one thing we share.
That makes up
That's
a
20% of
her
her personality. Yep.
And yeah, right. Okay. I think I want to be Russell, but I'd be low as well. I'd say probably about 25%.
Yeah.
And that is
You're haunted by your dead friends.
I'm haunted by my dead friends, and if I swallow a lot of pollution, I do grow to the size of a giant. But everything else, like glowing eyes and that sort of stuff, I don't have it. Musical talent, don't have it. But
would you rather glowing white eyes or like deep black eyes?
I think glowing white eyes,
Yeah,
because they also didn't say anything about that affecting his vision. Whereas the
Very true, yeah.
black eyes make everything a bit blurry, which I don't love the sound of. Blurry.
Wow.
Do you think?
It's an Oasis reference.
So here's some patrons and their favorite apes. If you don't mind me going through a few of these, I'd love to hear your comments on them.
Yeah, of course.
Maybe you critique their choices themselves. Brian and Laura have messaged in to say this from the Patreon. On the if you go to if you want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/dogoonpod. So Brian said his favorite ape is an ape named Ape from George of the Jungle, which is a movie we talked about a while ago. And he says that's his favorite because he loves a good amount of passive aggression in his primates.
So you already did an episode about George of the Jungle.
We did do, yeah. Watch out for that tree. We did in particular the Disney version from 1997 with Brendan Fraser,
right?
Which was the birth of a probable spin-off podcast called Phrasing the Bar, where we go through the movies of Brendan Fraser, probably coming in 2019. Me and Jess Perkins.
Excellent.
Anyway, some people are saying, is it a joke or not? And I'm not sure, but I think it's going to happen.
We got Mic Check. So,
yeah, exactly. Well, Mic Check was a direct inspiration for this podcast.
Great.
They made me realize that you can podcast, you can do whatever you like. It was a real great realization. Laura says her favorite is orangutan, ! They're cute and always look sad. Okay. And Goodnight, Mr. Tom is my favorite book. Oh, that's not relevant.
That's the other podcast.
That's the other
Get
podcast.
book shit out of here. We hate books.
Listen to Dave if you want to hear that sentence again.
That nonsense.
Thank you, Laura and Brian. And then Marcos Vasquez says Clyde the orangutan from Every Which Way But Loose, which is another movie that I think we're going to do on here one day. Says because he is funny and all he wants is love. Well, it's actually sex, but I'd like to think it's love. All right, Marcos. And then
We should make Dave read that one out too.
yeah, maybe we will. I think that's only fair. And then Ross McFadzean says his favorite primate is probably Gorilla Grodd,
Oh, right.
the mind-controlling supervillain of The Flash. Because
A man with taste.
yeah, okay, great. Finally, one that's won you over. It was the last one. Yeah, he says he loves how dumb the description of the character is. What would the description of the character be? What's his thing?
Is he dumb? No,
The description of him, I think it might be a pretty wild...
What description are you writing? I didn't write. I think if I wrote a description of Gorilla Grodd, you would be like, well, that sounds awesome.
All right, writer, can you write one now?
The Flash's greatest primate-based foe, who lives in the jungle but is smarter than all of his human foes and can control those same idiot foes.
That sounds cool.
Thanks so much.
Wow, I'm keen to do this Gorilla Grodd. Next time I'm in Sydney, we got to do that.
Yeah, sounds good.
So yeah, thanks to everyone who supports our little podcast thing, the Do Go On Network or whatever the hell this is at patreon.com/dogoonpod. But that brings us to the end of the show. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a real pleasure. I can't believe it. The guy who annoyed all of Geelong has come onto my stupid little podcast. What a pleasure.
Oh man, it's Geelong's pleasure.
Do you know how this show finishes?
I have to admit, I've never listened all the way
All
to
the
the
way
end.
in.
Because I was like, oh, fuck, I'm going on Matt's podcast. I'll listen to as many as possible to a point.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. That's fine. Well, the way it finishes is with the catchphrase that we always finish with, which you sort of riff, but we pretend like it always happens.
Oh,
okay?
of course.
Okay. Anyway, thank you so much for coming in, Andrew Levins, the DJ Levins.
Yep,
the D
that's me.
stands for Andrew.
Yep.
And the J stands for Justice.
That's right.
And as we always say on the Primates podcast,
which of course translates to subscribe to my podcast, please. I have 5 of them. One of them is called Hey Fam. That's about pop culture and dumb shit. And that's on Planet Broadcasting. So is Serious Issues, which is a weekly comic book podcast in which me and my friend Siobhan review like 50 comics a week. And then I have if you enjoyed listening to me talk about rap, I have a podcast called Old Raps. I'm losing my voice all of a sudden. Just choking up at the thought of talking about rap again.
I think it's your Tarzan call probably did it.
So Old Raps is one where every month I choose like a label or a producer or an area, and I kind of go through like a kind of history with like full songs too. We paid for a special license so I can do a proper radio show each month. And then I have one called All the Small Games, which is about indie games, and another one about food called The Mitchin. But this is the first 3, first and foremost. See if you like me. Come on. I mean, what's 3 podcasts, huh?
What would be your best in on what episode would you recommend on one of those? Maybe like do you have people like maybe past guests on here like Meso?
Meso and Mr. Sunday have done episodes of Serious Issues, but that's because it's week to week. Like you may as well listen to that just and find out the brand new comics that you could be reading.
Oh yeah, great. So for comic book lovers, that's the one.
Definitely. And then Old Raps, if you liked this and you want to hear me talk about, Dan the Automator is from Oakland, and so is the opening scene of Black Panther, and I did an entire episode all about Oakland rap, as inspired by that opening scene in Black Panther. So it's early 90s Oakland rap. I think he's from Oakland. He's definitely from San Francisco. So it's linked.
Yeah.
And then Hey Fam is just like a mess. Like it's the most, I reckon we have the most in-jokes out of anyone on Planet Broadcasting. So it's a bit polarizing at first, but you'll get used to it. You'll be fine.
You guys are very funny.
Oh, thanks.
Hey Fam. I reckon that's one of the funniest podcasts around.
Whoa.
Yeah, look, I don't want to big it up too much, but maybe it's the best ever.
So yeah, now you know what every time Tarzan was yelling, that's what he meant.
All of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great to have that shorthand and get those plugs in a lot of pretty big movies, actually. So thanks so much for listening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us, Levins. This is something I always forget to say, but if you got time, love you to go on and give the thing a 5-star rating. What am I trying to say? What do people say at the end of the podcast?
Like, comment, subscribe.
Yes.
How about that?
That'd be so good because those reviews, it helps it go up the iTunes charts or something. So if you give it 5 stars, I read those and they've been so nice so far. So I really do appreciate that. And yes, check out all of Levins's things and I'll put them on in the description here, and I'll probably link to some of those controversy articles as well.
Definitely. Sounds good.
Thanks so much for joining me, mate.
Cheers, Matt.
This podcast is part of the Planet Broadcasting Network.
Visit planetbroadcasting.com for more podcasts from our great mates. I mean, if you want. It's up to you.
So you're a Marvel guy.
Like, I don't know. I at the moment, I like what Marvel's putting out more than what DC is putting out.
And that's in print?
Yep.
And on the screen?
Yeah. I mean,
that's a no-brainer?
Yeah.
Because I feel like I'm in this weird place now where... Because I don't have a comic book background. As a kid, I didn't read them. I just didn't know they existed. I didn't have friends, I
Sure.
didn't
Yeah.
have friends who
That's
friends.
pretty similar to
I had
me.
friends. I don't know why you're saying I don't have friends.
Monkeys aren't friends, man.
Okay, all right. Bloody always get me on a technicality, but I'm loving it. Like since it's come to the big screen and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
It's such an
so
easy
much
way
fun.
in. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I am finding now that I'm almost more excited by the new DC movies because it feels like they're so much more full of potential.
But then they end and you're like, oh.
Yeah, I mean they're often letdowns, but I don't know. I feel excited about Aquaman and stuff like that.
After seeing, have you seen Venom yet? That came out
No.
this week, or many weeks ago, depending on when you put this one up.
Yeah.
Venom it's like one of the movies that Sony have done with the Spider-Man license, because they own that, so they can do movies with Spider-Man characters, but they can't do movies with Spider-Man in them because Marvel and them worked out a deal so that they can have Tom Holland Spider-Man in the MCU. They can do animated Spider-Man movies, which we're getting a Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse animated movie at the end of the year, and I'm hoping for your sake there's a Spider Monkey in there.
Well, Spider Monkey is from Marvel Apes.
Right,
Yes.
perfect. Yeah. But yeah, Venom is just like, it's Tom Hardy and an entire cast and crew who don't want to make a Venom movie, but Tom Hardy really fucking wants to make a Venom movie, and he is electric.
Oh, right.
It's like the first half of it is so boring, and then it just turns into the most insane, off the walls. There are scenes in it, particularly this one scene in a restaurant that I think are like Scorsese tier scenes of method acting. But then it's also him like talking to this like evil voice in his head that is also him with an effect on his voice, and he's always on edge. And
So, what do you like it?
I loved it.
Oh, that's great because
Yeah.
I haven't heard anyone be positive about
No, I
it.
really hope they make a sequel to it because it's just so it's insanely stupid. But we need some of these movies to be stupid.
It does feel like a great storyline. I love the idea of it. The symbiotes.
Yeah, but Spider-Man is obviously a big part of that story. He's just not in it. So
It's such a weird way to start what they're trying to do is start a new universe, right?
yeah, but so before this movie came out, I was like, "Fuck off, Sony! Give all the licensed stuff back to Marvel. Let them do it, in the MCU." And now after seeing this, I'm like, "I'll go for broke."
Yeah.
Like just make the most insane movies. Like make Tom Hardy the like linchpin of this universe. He can direct the next ones. Get him to make sure everyone has the same amount of energy that he does.
Right.
And just make it the most insane.
So
movie.
he's on board. I mean that's
Oh my
gotta
god!
be-
But then like he apparently like there are interviews where he's like, "Oh, they cut out 40% of my favorite scenes from the movie." Like he's like mad puppeteering.
damn it.
But so I want to see it. Release the Hardy cut.
Is that'll happen, right? They
Hopefully.
release so many different versions.
They've kind of stopped doing that.
Are the
now.
teeth rubbery or are they sharp?
The costume is a disgusting mess. I saw someone describe it as a bin bag covered in the goop inside a Cadbury cream egg.
Yum.
Yeah, and it's not far off what that. It's just like a gross mess, but that kind of adds to how insane this movie is.
Right.
It feels like it's a movie that escaped the black hole through a black hole in the late 90s, early 2000s when Hollywood didn't know how to make a superhero movie yet.
Yeah.
But then it took a bunch of drugs on its journey to 2018, and it's way crazier than those movies ever were.
Have you talked to? I mean, we're way off topic, but have you talked to anyone else who's into it?
Well, Angus and I, we reviewed it as soon as we saw it for Hey Fam, which is up now, and we felt pretty similarly about it. The general consensus is that it's awful, but it's done. I think it's going to make back its budget and then some. So hopefully we get a sequel.
That's so cool. I'm gonna go see that now.
And there's there's a final cuts, like a final post credit scene, which is a extended look at the Spider-Verse movie coming at the end of the year. Have you seen any of the trailers for that?
I saw a little clip of that.
Animation is so unique and awesome. And
Yeah, it
that's
looks weird.
I reckon
or
that
different.
that could be like in a year that gave us like Infinity War and Black Panther. I think that could be the best superhero movie of the year. Wow! Just because it's so different.
I mean, I don't even understand. It's confusing to me why it exists or how it exists. But
Yeah, weird contracts and deals from the past.
yeah, it's such a Marvel's cinematic contracts must be the most confusing, bits of legal paperwork.
And so there are like different spider characters from all out the universe, right? And they all come to Miles Morales' universe in this movie. And so you have like an older version of Peter Parker from another universe, and there's a version of where Gwen Stacy, but she becomes Spider-Woman, and so she's in this too. But then there's a character from the comics called Spider-Ham, and it's a pig who has spider powers, and he's voiced by John Mulaney.
Is that? Oh wow!
Yeah, and it's so perfectly cast. He has 2 lines in the latest trailer, and it's just like, yep, this is so good.
Was this before or after The Simpsons had Spider Pig?
Before. He's existed before then, I think.
Right, so The Simpsons kind of ripped him off.
I don't even know.
I would have been. I don't know what I would have preferred.
There is always the Simpsons did it defense for everything, but I think in this case, the Spider-Ham existed before Simpsons did it.
Wow, there you go. Homer ripped him off.